It took nearly 3 centuries after the first Europeans came to New Mexico for Truth or Consequences, now one of the state's best-known towns, to see its first settlers. As the state of New Mexico celebrates its centennial in 2012, TRC is also marking a century of settlement and development. The land, that is now the city of Truth or Consequences, has not been a permanent home for humans over the years, unlike some other areas of Sierra County. Historians assert the area was mostly inhabited by Apaches known as the Mimbres or Gila Apaches. They called themselves the Red Paint People, and later would be known as the Warm Springs Apaches after their homeland, Ojo Caliente. Apache people of the Athapascan culture are believed to have originated in northern Canada. It's estimated that Apaches arrived in the early 1500s in the area later known as Sierra County, approximately 100 years prior to the arrival of the Spaniards. Pottery shards and stone formations that appear to have been native corn grinding holes attest to the fact that native people spent time along the Rio Grande, where TRC is now, but there is no evidence of permanent habitation there. In 1598, Don Juan de Oñate and an expedition of soldiers, settlers, livestock, and carretas left Santa Barbara, New Mexico, south of Chihuahua. Oñate carved a trail north, a route that defined the El Camino Real along its entire length from Mexico City, Mexico to the San Juan Pueblo just north of Santa Fe. His advance party encountered a group of people native to the area who warned the men of the treacherous terrain if they continued their route along the Rio Grande. The constantly changing course of the Rio Grande had created a river landscape full of deep arroyos, steep ridges, treacherous canyons, and quicksand. That treacherous country included the present-day site of TRC, Hot Springs et al. Oñate veered eastward away from the river in the vicinity of present-day Doña Ana and Radium Springs. The route, though quicker and more navigable than the river landscape, proved to have little water, fuel, or shelter. This stretch of desert came to be known as the Jornada del Muerto, or Journey of the Dead. Lack of the fuel, water, and shelter weren't the only obstacles future travelers faced when crossing the Jornada. Apaches became notorious for their raids on the Jornada, and in the opinion of one newspaper, the chief danger at the Jornada was from bands of Indians who had, quote, an insatiable desire for horses, guns, and scalps. For the next 300 years, the TRC area was largely ignored by European settlers. Settlers sprinkled farms and homes along the route of the Camino Real, but none came to the Hot Springs area. The combination of the fickle Rio Grande and native resistance to American colonization meant that the current site of TRC was not settled until long after towns like Hillsboro, Chloride, Palomas, and Engel were already established and growing. The first permanent structure in what is now Truth or Consequences is reported to be a bathhouse for cowboys on the John Cross Ranch. That little adobe hut went up in 1882. Sierra County was formed in 1884 in a move spearheaded by mining interests in the burgeoning town of Hillsboro. Hillsboro became the county seat. At the time, there were no permanent residents at Palomas Hot Springs, where TRC now stands. The first homestead in the city was established by Fount Sullivan in 1910 and included much of what is now the city's center. Most of the land he claimed was swamp. He later sold the land to others who developed the town site. Two important events pushed the budding settlement forward in the early years of the 20th century. The first was the commencement of work on the Butte Dam in 1911. The second was New Mexico's elevation to statehood in 1912. One effect of building the dam was to restrain the Rio from meandering, which allowed the wetlands to be drained and buildings erected. Ambitious residents began to trickle into Palomas Hot Springs, as the town was then called. Stores, schools, and businesses began to appear, and the village of Hot Springs was incorporated in 1916. People living in the village in those days were legally squatters on federal lands, and it wasn't until 1917 that a presidential proclamation gave Hot Springs residents a chance to register their land ownership. The first town site survey was also completed by 1919. By 1920, 200 lots had been awarded to residents, and the unclaimed lots were auctioned, selling from $5 to $475 each, according to One Town History. During its early years, Hot Springs enjoyed considerable growth. not only as a result of its increasing fame as a health spa, but also as a result of the completion of Elephant Butte Dam just 5 minutes upriver. While the dam was being built, local stories go, liquor was prohibited at the work site and at the workers' camp, so saloons and gambling establishments grew like weeds in Palomas Hot Springs. A number of those who worked on the dam stayed after its completion in 1916, as did some who had started businesses to serve those working on the dam. Not only did Hot Springs benefit from the people working at the dam, but it was the scene of a building boom that resulted from the transfer of a number of buildings removed from the dam site that had served the workers during construction. A major landmark building brought in from Elephant Butte was the Vera Hotel, which was situated on a high bluff on Main Street overlooking the downtown area. Part of the original structure is still there and was recently reopened for limited public use. The first church building in Hot Springs also came from Elephant Butte, where it had been built by the mission of the Presbyterian Church for the people constructing the dam. It was used by all denominations for several years after its removal to Hot Springs. The first public school in Hot Springs is said to have been held in a tent in 1915, although other school classes were conducted prior to that time. A public school building was built on what is now Date Street in 1923. That building still stands. The first post office was opened in 1915 with M.L. Casey as postmaster. The first newspaper to be established in Hot Springs was the Herald, no relation to the present-day Herald. It was established in October 1916. According to one history, it was started by Reamer Ling, a prominent early local lawyer known as Judge Ling, who played an important role in establishing village location records. He apparently had some political aspirations and reportedly started the paper for use in the 1916 election campaign. In any case, the paper folded shortly after the election. In 1916, the Pankey family financed the water system for Hot Springs. Rube Pankey built the Pankey Water Works, which consisted of a water wheel at the Rio Grande River to carry water into the town of Hot Springs through pipes. The city later bought the system, and George Cook was hired to drill the water well for the city on March 13, 1925. He charged $2 for the first 100 feet, and for every foot thereafter the cost was $2.50. In the early 20th century, the automobile age had dawned, and in order for Hot Springs to benefit, there was a need to provide better access roads for the health seekers and the tourists who were coming increasingly by automobile. The Hot Springs area had little more than trails linking it to the outside world, as one historian explained. It was connected with Engle, the railhead for the Santa Fe Railroad, some 15 miles away, with a road suitable for stagecoaches and buckboards only, and then only in good weather. Hillsboro, the county seat, was only attainable by a similar kind of road. Although Hillsboro was 32 miles from Hot Springs, it took 3 days with the archaic mail system to get a letter from one community to another. The letter would go to Monticello, then Cochise, to Fairview, to Chloride, then on to Hermosa, and then finally get to Hillsboro. Residents were upset and complaining loudly about this slow service. By 1918, the account continues, the citizens of Hot Springs were already working to get a paved road from the village to Elephant Butte Dam, and they succeeded in getting a 4-mile stretch of graveled road built to Elephant Butte. The first road of any consequence coming into the local area from the north, and from Albuquerque, was built by prison labor and came only as far as Cochise. Plans for continuing it on south called for it to hit the river at Las Palomas, 7 miles below Hot Springs, which would have meant that it would bypass the village. Roads were built in those days with pick and shovel and mule-drawn scoops, and went on a sort of day-to-day hit-or-miss basis. The story goes that several early residents were able to alter the route of construction by changing some road markers so that the road ended up going through Hot Springs instead of around it. In 1935, the Carrie Tingley Hospital Club was formed in Hot Springs to aid in the plans to build a proposed hospital for crippled children. There were 700 members, and the club was named in honor of Mrs. Tingley. The Works Progress Administration, under President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal program, agreed to furnish the labor. Part of President Roosevelt's New Deal was to do projects that had long-lasting value in the community, as well as to put unemployed Americans to work. Basically, it employed Americans during the Depression who were otherwise unable to find work, and the projects were often hospitals, schools, parks, and other community projects. The town of Hot Springs paid $12,000 for the original hospital site, and the site was enlarged to include a 66-acre plot given by C.E. Henson and T.M. Hobbs. The first concrete was poured March 13, 1936, on property deeded to the state by the town. Construction began with 1.6 million bricks made by inmates at the state penitentiary. Carey Tingley Hospital was intended to serve only patients from New Mexico. The hospital could hold 100 patients with 50 outside patients. There would be no discrimination because of race or religion. There was also no cost for the care of the children who were at the hospital. The Sierra County seat was moved from Hillsborough to Hot Springs, which is now Truth or Consequences, in 1938. The celebrated Hillsborough Courthouse, which had been built in the 1890s, was sold in 1939 and taken apart brick by brick. Its demise was the result of an intense dispute, including a lawsuit, that erupted when the seat of county government was moved away from Hillsborough to the town that was more populous and prosperous at that point, Hot Springs. The salvaged bricks were trucked down the road 32 miles, where they were used to build new storefronts in downtown Hot Springs. In 1950, seeking to capitalize on an opportunity to win some free publicity through the powerful new medium of television, the city's residents voted to change the city's name from Hot Springs to Truth or Consequences, the name of a popular television quiz show. The show's producer, Ralph Edwards, became a Dutch uncle to the town, bringing movie stars and national attention to the little dusty desert city. Now, in the beginning of the 21st century, and with the building of Spaceport America in rural Sierra County, the dusty desert town is anticipating an exciting future that may rival its colorful past in both opportunity and distinction.